And we are live. Hello, everyone. My name is Stacey Nell, and I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas African American Affairs Commission. It has been several weeks since I have had a lunch and learn with Christmas and New Year's Day, and then there was an inauguration, and then there was Martin Luther King Day, and now I'm back. So thanks for holding on and waiting for me to come back. I am thrilled today, absolutely thrilled today, to be joined by my friend, Kerry Gooch. And I suddenly realized, hang on. I need to pull up my agenda for today because do I have the bio? And I definitely want to read the bio. I mean,
when you say your friend, are you saying your friend, or like, we know in the legislature when people call each other friends, that doesn't always actually mean they're friends. So
no, honestly, I count you as a friend, and I count you as a friend mainly because you have flown me someplace. And once someone actually has my life literally in their hands, we have to be friends. Otherwise, what was I doing?
To be fair, the non-pilot that was in the airplane did most of the flying more than I did. So,
that's a whole nother conversation. It's a whole other conversation. Yes, my friend Mike, who was thrilled to it was a lifelong dream for him to fly in an airplane, and Kerry was kind enough. Okay, so Kerry Gooch, here we go. Kerry Gooch is the founder of Gooch Strategies, a bipartisan government relation firm based in Topeka, Kansas. He represents clients in various fields, including healthcare, telecommunications, nonprofits, associations, and social services. Before starting Gooch Strategies, Kerry worked on various political campaigns ranging from local government and ballot initiatives to congressional and statewide races. He also became the youngest and first Black executive director of the Kansas Democratic Party. He assures me that did not happen when he was 13.
Not 13.
Not 13. While working there, he led the party to its most significant gain in a single election year by picking up 14 state legislative seats. Kerry's also served as the chief of staff for the Kansas Senate Minority Leader. While working for the Minority Leader, Kerry helped build a bipartisan coalition to pass legislation, confirm cabinet appointments, and coordinate constituent service reports during the COVID-19 pandemic. He holds dual bachelor degrees in aviation and political science from Kansas State University, serves on various boards and commissions in his community, and carries a lifelong Kansan, born and raised in Wichita, living now in Lawrence, Kansas with his wife, Carmen, and their chocolate lab, Peanut. Hi, Kerry.
Hey there, Stacey.
Thanks for humoring me and coming on.
No problem. I won't say I'm in my feelings. You've been doing this lunch and learn for like almost 2 years now. This is just my first opportunity to come on, but it's okay. I'll say you're starting the new year off right with having me on right now. So
there you go. Okay, since shots are fired, I'm going to ask you, Kerry, what have you had for lunch today?
Ouch. See, this is not fair because I just told you my wife was going to be watching this and going to fuss at me because I haven't had lunch yet today. I have not had lunch yet, but I will have lunch. I promise, Carmen. I promise I will have lunch at some point today. See,
okay.
Thank you, Stacey, for doing that. And I appreciate you putting that on the air. Thank you very much.
I ask all of my guests, you can look back through all of my guests. The first question is always, what have you had for lunch?
To be fair, I helped make sure lots of other people had lunch today. I just have not had lunch myself yet. So
this is true. Thank you. Okay, so I brought you here today. I was thinking about what this first lunch and learn should be. And I started to pull together because I'm finding a lot of people there's a lot of people who don't know how the sausage gets made, how bills make their way through, how bills are voted on. We talk a lot about bills and submitting testimony, but just the steps of how this gets done. I knew I wanted to do a lunch and learn talking about that. And I called you to do fact checking on what I was doing. And that's when I'm like, you know what, you should just come on and talk it through with me so that everyone can know what's going on. So that's what we're doing today. We're talking through how bills become law. I even made a PowerPoint presentation. Here we go. The Kansas Legislature, how the government works. Let me get my screen set up. So we're going to talk about the legislative branch, how the session is organized, committees, and all the things about how an idea becomes a bill, how a bill moves through, how bills die, how bills become law. We'll talk through the whole thing. And you had said, let's start with legislative leadership. So you want to give us a rundown of what the jobs are for each of these people?
Yeah. So on the screen, you have essentially the top leaderships in both the House and the Senate. The first is the Speaker of the House, who's Dan Hawken. This is actually his first term as Speaker of the House, so he just started this January. He served in other leadership position roles before that, but this is his first year kind of leading the charge in the House. Then you have the House Minority Leader, who's the leader of the House Democrats, Vic Miller. Representative Miller has been actually served in the House and the Senate before, and this is also his first year in this position as House Minority Leader. Then you have President of the Senate, Senate President Ty Masterson. Senate Masterson has been Senate President, I think, now for 2 years. This is his second year. And same thing with Senate Minority Leader. This is going on. Actually, this is going on both of their third years being in this leadership position. So, again, Speaker of the House, House Minority Leader, President of the Senate, and then Senate Minority Leader are the top 4 people in legislative leadership.
Now, as we talk about bills, the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate have a lot of power in terms of bill moving.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. The Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate basically almost decide basically what's going to come up on the floor, what gets voted on, what doesn't get voted on, what goes to what committees, and which committees they go to. They also technically are in charge of assigning committees. So as far as who sits on what committees and what time those committees meet and how often they meet, all that stuff generally flows through the Speaker in the Senate President's office. Also, the most important thing, if you talk to the legislator, that they do is they assign office and they assign parking spots in the garage. So you're always nice to the House Speaker and the Senate President if you want a good parking spot in the garage.
Things I did not know. They assign. So if your parking spot's really crappy, these are the people you have to go to.
Exactly.
Learn something new every day. That was not in my outline.
Glad I could throw a wrench in there for you.
There we go. So now the timeline of the session. I think some people I know in talking to people, they're surprised that, for example, it's not a full year thing. Some people assume, if you're a legislator, you work 40 hours, 50 weeks a year. So let's talk about the timeline here. So it's
sure. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, go for it. Sorry.
Well, I was going to say that the session started this year, January 9th, and on paper it runs for 90 business days. Now, that 90 business days is a moving target, I should say. And so it puts the end of it somewhere in May. But there are a couple, and I'll talk to these quickly, then you can go back and explain them, because this is where I had to call you and talk about, what's turnaround? Turnaround, very briefly, is the last day that any bill goes from one chamber to the other chamber. And then there's the end of regular session. And I put regular session, the last day, in quotes, because that can be a floating date. For this year's calendar, that falls on April 21st is the last day of the regular session. They have 2 days off. And then April 26th starts what's called the veto session, which it's the last chance with deal with any vetoes. So if bills pass through both sides, if the governor vetoes them, then you could deal with it during veto session. News to me that you pointed out is that new bills can come up during veto session, which seemed a little shady to me, but I don't make the rules. And then sine die is a fancy Latin term for the actual last day of session. So while the last day is kind of April 21st, sine die is a day where they decide, okay, we really are done. We don't have to come back the next day. So that day floats depending on if there's business that needs to be done or if there's bills that still need to be passed or worked. So it's not a hard date on the calendar. You want to add anything?
No, I think you walked through it correctly. Definitely. Again, sessions usually around 90 business days. Again, it's been shorter, it's been longer, depending on what hasn't happened yet. The one thing I like to remind folks, I don't know, sorry, Stacey, if I'm jumping ahead in your slideshow. The one thing that the legislature has to do, the only job that the legislature has to do every year is pass a budget. So they technically cannot end session until they pass the budget. After they pass the budget, they can technically end session and go home that exact day and never come back. But they have to pass a budget every single year. And so usually, unfortunately, that's one of the last things the legislature does is pass its budget. So when you talk about the session being extended or being shortened, it's usually around getting the budget done and sometimes about various other bills.
In theory, if they passed a budget tomorrow, they could say, okay, we're done. We passed the budget, go home.
In theory, they could pass a budget tomorrow and go home and be done. In theory. Yeah.
Probably won't.
Probably will not happen. But in theory, they could technically do that.
Gotcha. Okay, so we've mentioned committees. You talked about how the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House assign people to committees. There are three, again, this is sort of me testing my knowledge and see if I can explain it. There are three sort of categories of committees. We have standing committees, special committees, and interim committees. Standing committees, and all of this information you can find on the KS Legislature website. There's a little tab at the top. It says committees. And the standing committees are ones that are usually set. They are put in the schedule So it'll, the judiciary meets on Wednesdays at 9:30, or, not K-12 budget meets on Thursdays at 3:30. They're set in schedule, and they are scheduled to meet regularly. However, they may not necessarily meet regularly.
That's correct. Yeah.
Do you have any examples of ones that maybe don't meet regularly?
So in the past, they've had this regular committee. Actually, it was called Vision 2020, which was what we used to call a catch-all committee, where they kind of would throw legislators that they needed to give another committee to, but didn't have actually that much work. So there are certain committees that we kind of call the overflow or catch-all committees, where they kind of put legislators that they might only meet a couple times during session, or might not actually run any strong bills through that committee. But it's a committee that is kind of on call or can meet as often as the chair. Kind of.
Gotcha. So in the back of my brain, I'm like, go Google that and find out who's that committee. Those people who are like, we need to put them someplace. Okay, so I'll move on and won't get myself in trouble. Special committees are usually appointed around a specific issue. I know last year or 2 years ago, redistricting, like that was something that's like, we need to do redistricting. So they had a special committee on redistricting, or education, or foster care oversight.
Yep, that's exactly right. And these committees, like you said, are usually appointed around a particular issue or a particular topic that's going on, or something heavily. These committees are also usually committees that are combined with the House and the Senate. So it won't just be a House committee or a Senate committee. Now, they could do a special House committee on X, Y, and Z, or a special Senate committee on A, B, and C, but usually special committees are combined between both chambers, but they can also be separate. For instance, there was a redistricting committee in the House and a redistricting committee in the Senate, but then there was also a joint special redistricting committee as well. So
Gotcha. And then, okay, interim committees. And as I was typing this up, I had a question, and I figured I'd just ask you now. So interim committees take place outside the timeline of regular session. Since we are now in regular session, the standing committees are meeting. Right. The standing committees are going. Interim committees happen outside of the regular session.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the question that came to my mind. Legislators, that's sort of like an information gathering committee type situation, but they don't actually work bills in interim committee, do they? Because session's not in. Like, is that?
Yeah. No, that's a good way to put that. They don't actually work bills. Now, they can come up with a bill and they can put together a bill, but they don't technically vote on a bill that's going to go into the legislature or go straight to the House floor or something like that. Because again, it's usually interim committees are usually committees that have both the House and the Senate on them. So, for instance, this summer there was an interim committee on medical marijuana that contained House and Senate members. And the idea from that committee was they were supposed to kind of study this issue. And at the end of it, they were supposed to put together a bill that, this interim committee could then go take back to their original chambers and introduce. The interim committees don't usually vote on a bill per se that actually goes to like a legislature floor, but they usually will come up with a bill or something like that they can then take back during session and introduce them into one of the standing committees.
Cool. Right. Okay. That makes sense. Yes, because I had watched that interim committee on medical marijuana, but they didn't vote on anything. They're just gathering information.
Yeah.
Okay. How an idea becomes a bill.
Great picture, by the way.
Thank you. There is sometimes there's questions and confusions. Oh, we should write a bill, or who actually comes up with bills. So again, this is what I'm thinking. You can fact check me on this. An individual or a group can call a legislator and ask for permission to work with the revisers to have a bill drafted. And it's actually the revisers who actually write the bill. Once a bill is drafted, then it can be taken to any legislator who then introduces it to the body. But if it only really goes anywhere, goes back to leadership. So if I, Stacey Nell, or if someone, Sister Sue, wants to, I have this great idea that all pins should have a stylus on it so that we can use it on our devices. And if I want to write a bill, it's not me who writes the bill. I would have to do what?
Yeah, it's kind of exactly like you said it. In order to get a bill introduced into the legislature, it has to come from either from a committee or from a legislator directly, right? And so if you, Stacey, had that bill about your great pen stylus idea, you could go contact your legislator and say, hey, I have this great idea. I would love to work with you to get this bill drafted. What that legislator would do, like you said, he would put you in connection with the Office of the Revisers. So the Office of the Revisers is a nonpartisan office that works for the legislature. They are basically the attorneys of the legislators. They're all of them, I think all of them, most of them are attorneys, and they're the ones, like you said, that actually draft the bill. Again, they will sit down with you on behalf of that legislator and kind of hear all your thoughts and ideas of, what type of stylus you think the pen needs to have and what defines a pen and all that type of stuff. And so they kind of work through all the potential problems that would have that you might have introducing your stylus pen bill. And then they take that idea and they are the ones that kind of figure out where exactly it would need to be in the statute and exactly what the wording would need to say. And then after they finish drafting that bill, they take it to the legislature and they take it back to you to make sure you're okay with it. Then they hand that bill or assign that bill to that legislator for them to then introduce that bill.
Cool. The stylus has to be on the not the writing end.
Yeah, I've seen pens with the stylus on the pointy end, and you just like retract the pen side. Okay.
Those should be outlawed. That will be specified in my bill.
Okay, it's a great bill.
How a bill moves through. Now, this is some tiny print, but this is where it also can get pretty confusing. So I may just let you talk it through. So I take my stylus pen bill, and I approach legislator ABC. We get it drafted through the revisers, and now legislator ABC has decided to introduce it into their chamber. Let's say it's on the House side.
Sure. Yeah. So legislator A, B, and C introduces this bill. I'm not for sure where a stylus pen bill would go, but let's just play this out. This could be fun to think about. So what happens is after a bill gets introduced, it usually gets assigned to a committee. And this goes back to what we talked about earlier with those leadership positions. The president of the Senate, or in this case, the Speaker of the House, would assign that bill to a specific hearing. So let's just say that bill is going to go to the Judiciary Committee. So Speaker Dan Hawkins would assign that bill to the Judiciary hearing, and then it would be up to the chair of that Judiciary Committee to decide if they're going to have a hearing on that bill. They would decide if they're going to have a hearing, and then what a hearing basically is where each side gets to come up and talk about the bill. They bring in proponents and opponents and neutral testimony. Everybody kind of gets to go to this committee and talk about this piece of legislation, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, the good and the bad, and all sides get to present their ideas about this bill. This is where people sometimes talk about things that they would like to see changed in the bill, but it's usually just the general public or lobbyists or business entities or agencies. They all come in and talk about bills during the hearing. Then what can happen after that, if the committee chair decides that they want to have this bill continue to move forward, they do what they call working the bill. And that's where they will actually in committee vote on whether or not they want to send this bill to that legislative chamber. This is also when legislators have a chance to amend the bill or introduce different pieces of this bill while in committee.
So I mean, to take the analogy, so this is where they would decide, okay, the stylus end goes on the writing end or the non-writing end, right. Or they say, well, no, it has to go on the non-writing end, and they could fight over it. Yep. Or they could say it needs to be a click pen, or it needs to be there could be amendments,
or it needs to be red pen versus blue pen, or black pen or green pen, whatever color pen you want to be. Yes, in the committee hearings, and then when they're working the bill is when all of that type of sausage kind of gets made during committee, and then they eventually vote on the bill whether or not they want to pass this bill out of committee favorably or not favorably.
Let's say it passes out.
Great. Your bill has now officially passed out of committee favorably. Mm-hmm. Now it goes back to the original chamber. And it goes back to, again, when we talked about earlier, leadership deciding on whether or not they want to then bring that bill to the floor. So after a bill passes out of committee, and we'll talk a little bit of in the weed lingo, it goes below the line is what we call it. The line is a list of bills that have been passed out of committee, but have not been brought up yet for a hearing yet, or to be worked on the floor. So once the leader of the chamber decides that they want the bill to be worked on the floor, they do what they call bringing that bill above the line, and that means that bill is going to be worked on the floor that day. So let's say your bill passes out of committee, and then the House Speaker of the House decides, hey, we're going to work this bill. I'm going to bring it above the line next Monday. So what would happen that day is they would bring that bill to the floor of the House, and every single legislator would have a chance to talk about the bill. They would have a chance to amend the bill, and eventually they would hopefully have a chance to vote on the bill and pass it out of committee or pass it off of the House floor.
Right.
And then oh, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I was gonna go ahead because I was gonna ask about the line thing, but go. You can go. Keep going.
No, I was gonna talk about what happens after it passes out of that house. So we'll stop.
Just this idea of the line, because you even clarified this today before we got on. So this idea of a bill being below the line or above the line. Below the line meaning it's not going to get voted on the floor of the chamber, and above the line meaning that it does get voted on the chamber. That the I guess the line is the same, but bills can move. Like bills don't. If it's below, it could be below the line Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then get above the line.
It's exactly how it works.
Okay.
Yep. That's exactly how it works. So again, you're always kind of watching what is above the line that day or going to be above the line that next day. Usually they put it out the night before.
And that's decided by the leadership of the chamber.
That's exactly right. It's decided by the leadership of the chamber. Yep. And then essentially after your bill passes on one house, it basically goes and has the same whole process again on the other house. So after it passes out of the House committee after it passes out of the House committee and on the House floor, then it basically has that same process over on the Senate side. So it'll get referred to the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they'll have a hearing, and then they'll work the bill. And then if they pass it out of committee, it'll go to the Senate floor if it's above the line, whenever it gets above the line, and then they'll vote on it. And then you have a bill that's now passed both chambers.
Gotcha. And I tossed in gut and go. Can gut and go essentially happen at any point? And you might want to talk about what gut and go is briefly.
Yeah, the answer is yes. A gut and go can happen at any point. Essentially, the easiest way to explain a gut and go is when someone has a bill and a legislature decides to basically take all of the contents of that bill out of it and put contents of another bill into it. And so it's done for lots of different reasons, sometimes for helpful reasons, sometimes for not helpful reasons. But yes, a gut and go is basically the taking out of contents of one bill and putting in the contents of another bill or other words.
So my wonderful stylus pen bill could make it through one side, and then a legislator could say, no, this needs to become a Post-it note bill. And they could just swap it completely, and suddenly it's a Post-it note bill that has passed. But it now no longer has anything to do with stylus pens. Now it's Post-it notes.
That's exactly right. Yep.
Okay, that seems shady, but we'll keep moving on. How a bill can die. I am most pleased with this graphic about how a bill can die. So as we talked about it, bills can die. Actually, bills can die before they even get to committee, kind of based on what you've said, because leadership can just say, nope.
That's exactly right. A bill can get assigned to a committee. Your pen stylus bill could get assigned to House Judiciary Committee, but the chair of the committee hates pens and he only uses number 2 pencils. So he's going to decide we're never going to do a hearing on this bill. So at that point, the bill just stays in committee and never goes anywhere, and it never gets a hearing, it never gets voted on, and it never moves any direction.
That's called dying in committee.
Yep, that's exactly right. The same thing could happen after a bill passes out of committee, right? If, say the chair of the House Judiciary Committee loves pens and he thinks pens are awesome, but the Speaker of the House only uses fountain pens, and fountain pens can't have styluses. So therefore he decides that bill was never going to go above the line on the House floor. So that bill then has now died basically on the House floor because it never got a vote.
We're talking about pens, but this sounds like some of the arguments that I've heard.
I'm just saying. That's kind of fun. This could totally be the Kansas Legislature for real.
And so that's when something dies on the floor. Yep. It may have gotten out of committee, but it dies on the floor, right?
Yep. Or never even gets to the floor to die there.
Right.
But to actually die on the floor, a bill could be brought up on the floor and not get enough votes to pass, and then that bill is dead on the floor too. So again, there's lots of different ways. And then the same thing could happen is the Speaker of the House could love the pen stylus bill, and everybody in the House loves the pen stylus bill, and they pass it, and then it gets sent to the Senate chamber. But the Senate president hates pens, and he only uses finger paint. I don't know, and so he decides to never even have a bill hearing on the Senate side. So you have this bill that's passed one chamber, but never hearing in another chamber. Yeah, this is gonna be fun. I hope all these leadership people aren't watching this. They're gonna be like, finger paint hearing, really? But yeah. There we go.
Okay, or it could be vetoed.
Right?
Because Governor Kelly could just be like, no, we're all using text.
Exactly. Or crayons, right? She's a crayon fan, and that she doesn't believe that pens should be a thing. I don't know.
Good save. Yeah.
So again, you could have the House pass a bill, you could have the Senate pass a bill, and they all love this bill, and it goes to the governor, and the governor has a couple different options there. She could decide that she doesn't like the bill and she could veto it, and then it gets sent back to the legislature.
Okay, we're going to move on. We're going to get off this slide. Talking about how bills become a law. So let's say a bill survives everything. It survives one chamber, it survives committees, it survives second chamber, it survives committees. Let's say it hasn't even been gut and go. We still have the pens. Now, so how do bills actually become laws?
Yeah, and that's right. That's where we're going on the last piece. But basically, there are two ways a bill, once it's passed all the chambers and kind of done its all process when it heads to the governor. One, the governor can sign the bill, and then the bill becomes effective at whatever date that's put in the bill that it's supposed to become effective, or when it's enrolled in the statute books. Or two, the governor can decide not to sign the bill and let it become law without her veto. So basically, if a bill gets to the governor's desk and the governor decides not to sign the bill, after 14 days, that bill automatically becomes law, whether the governor signs it or not. But then the third option, again, the governor can veto the bill, and then it goes back to the chamber that it originally started in.
And they need 2/3.
Yes.
2/3 of both to override a veto. So overriding a veto is a heavy lift.
Yeah, again, you need 2/3, exactly right. And in particular, it's important to remind folks that it's 2/3 yes votes. So if you only have half of the chamber there present that day, you can get 2/3 of that half of that chamber, but that's not enough. You need 2/3 of the entire legislature. So if people don't show up that day to vote, or if people are out sick, or whatever happens to be, if you don't get 2/3 of the total legislature to vote yes to override a governor's veto, that veto is what we call then sustained.
Gotcha. Okay. And both have happened. Vetoes have been sustained and vetoes have been overridden. So it's nothing is a given, I should say.
Exactly.
Okay. We made it through. We made it through and only said 4 or 5 stupid things that I may have to answer for tomorrow. So I do
enjoy that one. So I'm gonna let you enjoy those conversations.
Yeah, great. Thanks. That's the danger of live. That's the danger of live. All right. So I do want to take a couple minutes to publicize some upcoming events. Kerry obviously has a knowledge of how the legislature runs, which is why Kate brought you on here to talk about how the legislature runs, to sort of fact check and how do bills become law, how do they make their way through. You are also taking off your knowledge of the legislature / lobbyist hat, the current president of the Black Leadership Council, Kansas Black Leadership Council. And KBLC and KAAAC are sponsoring a Black Legislative Day at the Capitol. This is our next big event. We're excited about it. It will be taking place on Tuesday, February 14th. Yes, that is Valentine's Day. Yes, you will be done in time to get home to have, a wonderful evening with your significant other or your dog or cat.
What better way to spend Valentine's Day with your significant other than ask the legislature for Black Legislative Day? So bring them along with you. There you go.
Okay, if that's your choice. For some people, politics might be their love language.
Exactly right.
For my husband, not so much. Your wife, Carmen, would that be romantic for her?
Oh man, I'm sure she would love that. Would love this. No better way to spend her Valentine's Day than with me in the legislature.
Okay. I still think we should call this for the love of the legislature being Valentine's Day.
I like it, for the love of the legislature.
For the love. All right. Well, it'll be from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. There's a $15 charge that will cover the cost of lunch. Lunch will be available. Actually, we'll even have a little bit of a breakfast, pastries and coffee. And I was going to put the link if you would like to register. Hopefully that'll pop up in the chat. You can get tickets, and we hope to see everybody there. We still have a little bit of planning to do with what the topics will be, but we know, for example, we will most likely be talking about issues that are important to the Black community, police training, education,
local government control,
local control versus state control,
criminal justice reform, all those type of great topics.
Lots of topics. And there will be opportunities as well throughout the day to meet with legislators. If you'd like, just to train people how to talk to legislators and make that whole process a little less scary. They really are. They're normal people. They don't bite.
They don't bite.
Again, we're being nice here. I have, you know what? I have never been bitten by one of them.
I have never been bitten by a legislature either. So there you go.
See, there you have it. Okay, so look at that. We're at 29 minutes and 42 seconds, exactly on time. I know you have meetings, and so do I. But I did want to thank you so much for joining me today, for joining us on this. Let me get this out of the way. So here we go. For joining us in this Lunch and Learn. Thanks for taking the time, and go eat something.
I will go eat something. Thank you much for finally inviting me. I couldn't think of a better person to start out your 2023 Lunch and Learn. It's the 23rd of January for 2023. I like that. Boom. There you go.
Very serendipitous. Okay. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Monday. Talk to you later. Bye.